Have you ever wondered why the sweetest words often come from the people who value you the least? Why the phrases that sound the most comforting can quietly become the chains that keep you stuck in a connection that drains you? Every man who has been used knows this silent conflict. You feel something is wrong, yet the words you hear are warm enough to calm your doubts. You sense distance in her actions, yet her voice wraps around your insecurities with perfect timing. And before you realize it, you start trusting the words more than the reality in front of you. This is how emotional manipulation begins. Not with anger, not with cruelty, but with sweetness, with softness, with lies that sound almost too gentle to question. You begin to accept a version of her that only exists in your imagination. You hold on to the compliments because they feel good. You cling to the affection because it feels rare, and you convince yourself that the discomfort you feel is just fear, not truth. But deep down, something in you already knows. Something inside is whispering that the affection doesn't match the effort, the attention doesn't match the commitment, the connection doesn't match the inconsistency. That tension inside you is not weakness. It's awareness trying to break through. It's your intuition fighting for your dignity. It's the part of you that refuses to settle for temporary affection dressed up as love. And the moment you begin to listen to that voice, everything changes. Because the truth is this, when someone is using you, they will never push you away. They will keep you close enough to benefit from you, but far enough to avoid giving you anything real. Their words become the tool, their sweetness becomes the weapon, and your hope becomes the target. But here's the emotional reward for staying with this message. Once you understand how these sweet lies work, you become untouchable. You stop falling for the same patterns. You stop giving access to people who only show up when it benefits them. You stop mistaking empty words for genuine care. You regain the power you didn't even realize you were losing. And that power changes not only how you see relationships, but how you see yourself. You deserve honesty. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve a connection built on effort, not excuses. And the sooner you recognize the subtle tricks of emotional manipulation, the sooner you stop settling for someone who only values what you give, not who you are. The sweetness of their words no longer blinds you. The lies no longer seduce you. The emotional confusion no longer controls you. You begin to see patterns clearly, and clarity is the beginning of freedom. Stay with this message, because understanding these 9 sweet lies will give you a kind of emotional strength most men never develop. It will help you protect your heart without closing it. It will help you recognize real love without falling for illusion. This is the knowledge that saves you from repeating the same painful mistakes. This is the insight that transforms you from someone who gets used into someone who chooses differently, confidently, and consciously. And once you have that awareness, no lie, no matter how sweet, will ever trap you again. The moment you begin to see through the sweetness, you start to understand why certain words are repeated so often. They aren't just phrases, they're strategies. They're emotional shortcuts designed to lower your guard and make you easier to influence. And the first lie always aims at one thing, your ego, because once your ego is touched, your logic becomes quiet. When she tells you that you're different from other men, she isn't praising your character. She's selecting the perfect phrase to make you feel chosen. And when a man feels chosen, he stops questioning. He starts giving more. He starts proving himself, even when nothing real has been promised. That's the psychological hook. A compliment becomes a cage. You don't notice it because it feels good. You don't resist it because it boosts your worth. But a woman with genuine interest doesn't need to elevate you above others to make you feel valued. She shows it with consistent behavior. She shows it with steady effort. She shows it with presence, not poetic lines. When the words are grand but the actions remain minimal, you aren't being appreciated, you're being softened. And then comes the lie that keeps you waiting, the request for more time. On the surface, it sounds patient and emotionally mature, but emotionally unavailable people use this phrase to keep the door open without ever stepping inside. She tells you she needs time so you don't walk away. She knows you care. She knows you're invested. She knows you want to be understanding. And that's exactly why the lie works. You give her space, but she gives you nothing in return. You hold on because you think patience will be rewarded, but she holds on because your patience benefits her. This slow emotional drain is deliberate, not necessarily out of malice, but out of convenience. When someone knows your weight without receiving anything meaningful, you become a source of comfort they can access whenever they want. Not a partner, not a priority, just emotional support disguised as potential. And that illusion can trap you for months or even years if you don't recognize how it rewires your self-worth. Then there's the lie that feels the hardest to challenge, the claim that she cares about you deeply. Those words are powerful because they touch the deepest part of you, the part that wants to feel loved, the part that wants to feel chosen, the part that longs for connection. But care is not defined by language, it's defined by effort. Real care shows up in actions, even on days when it's inconvenient. When someone truly values you, you don't have to guess, you don't have to interpret, you don't have to chase clarity. It's obvious, it's consistent, and it's felt without being repeatedly announced. When a woman uses this lie, it's often because she senses you're slipping away. She feels your doubt. She recognizes your hesitation. And instead of stepping up with real commitment, she steps in with emotional reassurance. Not to love you, but to keep you close enough to serve her needs. The words become a bandage she applies to your wounds, wounds she created through her absence, her inconsistency, and her selective affection. The more you hear these sweet lies, the more you begin to lose the ability to trust your own judgment. But the truth is already inside you. You just need the strength to stop being seduced by phrases that sound good but lead nowhere. When you learn to measure affection by action, not words, you protect your heart from manipulation. You reclaim the self-respect that sweetness tried to blur, and that strength becomes the shield that stops you from ever being quietly used again. Confusion becomes the next tool she reaches for, because nothing disarms a man faster than uncertainty. When she tells you she's confused, she isn't admitting vulnerability. She's creating a fog that keeps you from seeing the truth clearly. Confusion becomes her shield. It lets her avoid responsibility for the mixed signals, the emotional distance, the lack of commitment. And once you accept that she's confused, you begin to take on the emotional burden yourself. You start trying to make things easier for her. You try to become clearer, calmer, more patient, more understanding. Instead of questioning her behavior, you question your expectations, and that shift works perfectly in her favor. Confusion from the other person always becomes clarity for the one being used, because the moment you believe she doesn't know what she wants, you stop asking for what you deserve. You silence your needs, thinking it will make things better. But silence becomes a habit, and habits slowly turn into self-betrayal. When someone truly wants you, they may not have all the answers, but they never leave you lost. They don't build connections on excuses. They build them on intention. Then comes the compliment disguised as regret, the line that hits your emotions with surgical precision. I wish I met you earlier. It sounds innocent, it sounds sweet, it sounds like she's imagining a different life where she chose you. But the truth behind that phrase is simple. It gives you hope without offering commitment. It places all the potential in a fantasy timeline where nothing is required from her right now. It creates the illusion of connection while freeing her from responsibility in the present. This type of emotional bait keeps you attached because it paints you as the right person at the wrong time. And no man wants to lose someone who claims he could have been the perfect choice, but a statement about timing is meaningless when effort is missing. If someone truly sees your value, they don't need a different year, a different season, or a different version of themselves to step towards you. They choose you where you are. They choose you now. Anything less is not love, it's decoration. Then there's the lie meant to frame her as considerate, even while she hurts you. I don't want to hurt you. That phrase is powerful because it sounds kind. It makes her appear gentle, thoughtful, protective. But the reality is often the complete opposite. People who truly don't want to hurt you take action to avoid hurting you. They don't use emotional safety as a shield to hide behind while continuing the very behavior that causes pain. This line is often used right before she asks you to lower your expectations, to accept less, or to stay patient for something. She has no intention of giving. This is psychological conditioning. You begin to believe that she cares simply because she claims she doesn't want to cause harm. You start interpreting her emotional withdrawal as an act of kindness rather than a sign of disinterest. And that confusion makes you work harder. You try to become easier to love. You try to become less demanding. You try to stay strong, hoping your loyalty will eventually inspire her clarity, but loyalty cannot fix what someone refuses to address. Effort cannot awaken someone who enjoys the benefits of your presence without offering anything real in return. The emotional momentum you feel is not love, it's attachment. The hope you hold is not mutual, it's one-sided. And the sooner you face that, the sooner you reclaim the ability to walk away from illusions dressed as affection. Because the truth is simple. Someone who wants you will never hide behind confusion, regret, or emotional excuses. They will show up with intention, consistency, and truth. Self-doubt becomes the next battle battle you never asked to fight, because once her excuses start losing their power, she shifts the focus onto your mind. When she tells you that you're overthinking, she isn't trying to bring you peace. She's trying to silence the part of you that finally recognizes the truth. Overthinking becomes the label she places on your intuition. She turns your clarity into confusion, your awareness into insecurity, your instincts into flaws. And when you start believing that your natural ability to sense inconsistency is a weakness, you hand over your power without realizing it. You begin to question your own judgment. You begin to shrink your own voice. You begin to apologize for noticing the very signs she's trying to hide. This psychological shift is dangerous because the moment you stop trusting your intuition, you become dependent on her interpretation of reality. You start waiting for her explanations, her reassurances, her validation. And she knows it. She knows that if she can make you doubt yourself, she can shape how you see the connection, even when the connection is built on imbalance. But a man loses himself when he stops believing what his spirit already knows. And the moment you let someone redefine your truth, you lose the ability to protect your own heart. Then comes the lie she reaches for when she needs distance without taking responsibility. I've just been busy. It sounds harmless. It sounds reasonable. But repeated busyness is not a schedule issue, it's a priority issue. People make time for what they value. They show up for what matters. They respond when they care. Occasional busyness is life, but consistent busyness is avoidance. And the more you accept this excuse, the more you allow yourself to be placed on the bottom shelf of someone's attention while they keep you emotionally available as a convenience. This lie keeps you hoping for more while receiving less. You start justifying her absence. You explain her behavior to yourself. You convince yourself that she'll be more present when things settle. But things never settle because the problem is not her schedule. The problem is her interest. Emotional inconsistency wrapped in excuses is one of the strongest signs a person is using you, and accepting it trains you to tolerate emotional scraps. Then she gives you the lie that appears generous but is actually strategic. I appreciate everything you do. On the surface, it sounds like gratitude. It sounds like recognition. But appreciation without effort is manipulation. She uses this phrase when she needs something from you, your time, your support, your resources, your energy. She says she appreciates you to keep you giving, to keep you invested, to keep you hopeful. But real appreciation inspires reciprocity. Fake appreciation only inspires more sacrifice from you. This is where many men break without realizing it. You start giving harder. You try to show her even more love. You try to become even more supportive, believing that if she appreciates what you do, eventually she'll offer the same in return. But one-sided appreciation is not affection, it's extraction. It's a cycle where you pour and she receives, you uplift and she benefits, you try and she watches. Every time you fall for these sweet lies, a small part of you weakens, a small part of you drifts further from your own worth, a small part of you forgets what it feels like to be chosen with intention instead of convenience. But the moment you finally see these patterns for what they are, you reclaim something powerful, the right to stop accepting words that are not backed by effort. And the day you honor that right is the day you stop being controlled by excuses, confusion, and empty sweetness. That is the day you rise back into your own strength. You don't realize how much damage these lies cause until you start seeing the pieces of yourself you've silently sacrificed. At first, it's small things, your time, your attention, your emotional energy, but slowly you begin giving parts of your identity just to maintain a connection that only drains you. And the most dangerous part is that it doesn't happen through cruelty. It happens through softness, through words that sound gentle, through excuses that sound understandable, through affection that appears just often enough to keep you hoping. Manipulation wrapped in sweetness is harder to detect, and that's exactly why it works. Your mind learns to normalize inconsistency. Your heart learns to tolerate disappointment. Your confidence begins to dim because you're constantly trying to earn something that should have been given freely. You start believing that if you could just be more patient, more supportive, more flexible, everything would fall into place. But that belief is the trap, because every time you lower your standards to keep someone who isn't choosing you, you teach yourself that your needs are a burden. You train your heart to accept emotional poverty. And once that happens, even the smallest bit of attention feels like a blessing. This is where emotional exhaustion takes root. Not the exhaustion of doing too much, but the exhaustion of caring too deeply for someone who never cared enough. The exhaustion of waiting for a moment that never comes. The exhaustion of hoping she will one day treat you with the same devotion you freely give. You don't even notice the drain at first. because the lies come packaged as reassurance. But reassurance without real change is just another form of control. It keeps you emotionally invested while she remains emotionally absent. You begin to disconnect from your own potential. The goals you once had start fading into the background. The ambitions you once chased start feeling less important. The confidence you once carried starts slipping away. You stop prioritizing yourself because all your energy is tied to someone who only values what you provide, not who you are. And every time you prioritize her over your own well-being, you sink deeper into a version of yourself that exists only to be convenient for someone else. What makes this damage so dangerous is that it feels like love while it's happening. It feels like effort. It feels like emotional investment. Your mind mistakes struggle for commitment. Your heart mistakes temporary attention for genuine care. And before long, you lose the ability to recognize the difference between love and dependency. But love elevates you, dependency breaks you, love strengthens you, manipulation weakens you, love gives you peace, lies give you anxiety masked as attachment. The moment you realize this, something powerful awakens inside you, the understanding that you deserve more than emotional crumbs. You deserve more than conditional affection. You deserve more than someone who uses your loyalty as a safety net. And once you acknowledge the damage, you can begin to repair it. You can rebuild your strength. You can reclaim your clarity. You can restore your confidence piece by piece. The lies don't just hurt because they're false. They hurt because you believe them with an honest heart. But honesty is not a weakness. Your capacity to care deeply is not a flaw. Your loyalty is not something to be ashamed of. It only becomes painful when it's given to someone who knew how to take but never learned how to give. The turning point is recognizing that the pain you feel is not a sign that you're unworthy. It's a sign that you've been pouring into the wrong hands. And once you see that, you gain the strength to stop accepting anything that diminishes the man you're meant to become. The moment you start reclaiming your worth, the lies lose their power, and you begin to see the truth that was always there. You notice how much peace you sacrificed just to keep someone who never offered stability. You recognize how many times you silenced your own needs just to avoid losing someone who never feared losing you. And with that clarity comes a quiet strength, a strength that whispers that your heart was never the problem. The problem was giving it to someone who treated it like an option, not a gift. You begin to understand that love without reciprocity is not love at all. It's emotional labor disguised as devotion. It's your willingness to give mistaken for her willingness to stay. It's your patience stretched beyond its limits because you believe she needed time, when in reality she only needed the benefits you provided. But now your eyes open to what you truly deserve: consistency, honesty, effort, and emotional presence. These are not luxuries. These are the basics of real connection. And when someone can't offer even the basics, it's a sign you were never meant to stay there. As this realization settles into your spirit, something remarkable begins to shift inside you. You start valuing your time again. You start protecting your energy again. You start choosing yourself again. And every time you choose yourself, the version of you that once accepted lies begins to fade. The version of you that tolerated emotional crumbs begins to disappear. You begin stepping back into your identity with a stronger backbone and a clearer mind. You remind yourself that your heart deserves peace, not constant uncertainty. It deserves appreciation that shows in actions, not just words. It deserves someone who shows up with intention, not someone who shows up when it's convenient. The moment you embrace that truth, your standards rise naturally, not because you're bitter, but because you're finally awake, not because you're cold, but because you've learned the cost of ignoring your own worth. You begin to feel a new kind of power within you, the power to walk away from what does not nourish your soul, the power to stop negotiating your value, the power to demand effort instead of accepting excuses. And with that power comes freedom. Freedom from emotional manipulation, freedom from confusion, freedom from the weight of trying to make someone stay who was never committed to being there. This transformation doesn't make you harder, it makes you wiser. You start noticing patterns faster. You trust your intuition more. You become more selective, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. You stop chasing mixed signals because you've learned that clarity is a love language. You stop waiting for someone to change because you've learned that real love doesn't require convincing. And you stop allowing sweet lies to override the truth. Your spirit already knows. Your confidence begins to rebuild itself from the inside out. Not the loud, external kind, but the deep, grounded confidence that comes from knowing you will never abandon yourself again, that you will never tolerate, emotional neglect just to feel wanted, that you will never accept temporary affection in place of genuine commitment. You rise into a version of yourself that no longer bends to be chosen. You choose yourself first, and the world adjusts. And as you step into that strength, you realize something life-changing. The lies she told you were never a reflection of your worth. They were a reflection of her limitations. The truth you carry now is far more powerful than any sweet lie ever spoken to you. You are no longer the man who gets used. You are the man who sees clearly, stands firmly, and chooses differently. Every moment you rise after being overlooked strengthens the muscle that refuses to collapse under pressure. You start to understand that real confidence is not built when people applaud you, but when you clap for yourself in the silence no one else hears. You become the kind of person who doesn't need permission to grow, approval to improve, or validation to keep moving. You stop waiting for someone to choose you, because you finally recognize that your self-worth was never meant to be outsourced. You reclaim every piece of yourself that you once gave away too easily, and with each breath you remind yourself that you were never lacking. You were simply learning who you are meant to become. You begin to feel a shift inside, a quiet refusal to tolerate the habits that once drained you. Your boundaries begin to harden, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for the life you want to build. You stop showing up in places where your presence is treated like a convenience. You stop giving energy to conversations that go nowhere. You stop allowing your emotions to be dictated by people who don't understand the weight of your heart. This is not coldness, it is maturity, it is emotional discipline. It is the kind of strength that grows when you finally acknowledge that peace is more valuable than being understood, and growth is more important than being liked. You start to realize that your progress does not need to be loud. You don't need to broadcast every step, every plan, every breakthrough. You learn to move in silence because you no longer crave attention. You crave results. You crave alignment. You crave the internal freedom that comes from knowing you are becoming someone you can rely on. And the more you invest in yourself, the clearer it becomes that the world mirrors back the energy you embody. When you elevate your standards, your environment responds. When you shift your mindset, your reality follows. When you refuse to shrink, the world adjusts to your new size. The doubts that once held you hostage start losing their power. The fears that used to paralyze you become smaller as your vision grows larger. You start trusting your own voice, the one you used to silence because you thought it wasn't enough. You begin to see how much you've been carrying, and yet you're still standing. That realization alone becomes fuel. It becomes proof. It becomes the reminder you hold on to during the moments that test your resolve. And those moments always come, but they no longer break you the way they once did. Now they shape you, refine you, sharpen you into someone who refuses to fold under pressure. And as your inner strength deepens, you stop chasing closure, validation, or explanations. You stop reopening chapters you've already outgrown. You stop negotiating your worth with people who cannot see your value. You start choosing silence over chaos, purpose over distraction, discipline over comfort. You begin showing up for yourself in ways that make you unrecognizable to the version of you that once settled for less. You begin honoring your potential with the consistency it deserves. You stop waiting for the right moment and create your own momentum. Every breath becomes a declaration that you are moving forward. Every choice becomes a step toward the life you envision. Every day becomes an opportunity to rise above the noise within and around you. And as you grow, you realize that the person you are becoming is not defined by the losses, the wounds, or the misunderstandings. You are defined by the strength to rise, the courage to change, and the willingness to become the version of yourself that refuses to surrender to anything less than the life you deserve.